Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Path. It is Dara and Jamie here with you today on what is the eve of the launch of 10th edition. Today, we are going to be talking about our highlights from 9th edition, so stay tuned for that one, folks. It's coming up next. All right, Jamie, what's up? How you doing, man?
Not too bad, man. I'm currently sweating quite profusely. For anyone who didn't know, I'm actually on holiday in the UK, back in London for a couple of weeks. And it's very, very hot here. So I'm currently sitting in my old teenage bedroom. It's been redecorated since, obviously the walls were black when I lived here and everything. Um, but yeah, just staying with my mum, brought the family over, doing some stuff, and unfortunately, I just had to shut the window to keep the outdoor noise out, so it is hot. But
Yes.
doing all right. Yeah, it's been fun, kind of like frustrating because I'm missing out on a lot of the kind of 10th edition stuff going on. I haven't been able to get any games in a while. But when we take a train journey, I kind of sneak on my phone and like look up data sheets or go through the rules. Finally got the app downloaded, the new Warhammer list building app downloaded, and I've been trying to get used to it a bit and do some lists and stuff. So doing all right, doing all right.
Nice. That's good. Good to hear. Yeah, wicked. So what we're going to be talking about today, I suppose we're going to go through what we think ninth edition did well and what we think ninth edition did poorly. And we're going to focus on like some aspects of ninth edition which were like our favorite moments, so favorite events, models, things like that. And we're going to work through that. We're going to talk about just the edition overall, sort of a memento to it as we say goodbye to it. And I think it's fair to say, regardless of how 10th is shaping up, I think we're both going to miss ninth, right?
Oh, absolutely. Many people watching this, and that we've made friends with, or just sort of drop in and watch a video here and there, are probably in similar boats to myself. I got into 40k again right at the end of seventh, effectively the start of eighth. So I've played all through eighth and ninth. And whilst eighth was a lot of fun, ninth really dialed in and honed in on some of the key elements, the key mechanics and things, and really up the game, I feel, for 40k. And obviously, we're going to talk about some of that stuff coming up. But I really have enjoyed ninth edition. I've liked a lot of the things it brought to the table, the direction it steered the game in, um, the almost sort of improvement and increase of fluffy narrative themed armies. Of course, there are obvious exceptions to that, but it did feel like you could go to a tournament like a GT or something, and a lot of the armies you saw when there wasn't an obvious build going on, when there wasn't a Crusher Stampede or something, you would face quite fluffy armies, lists that maybe weren't the list for that faction, and it would still perform well. It didn't feel like you were locked out of experimentation in ninth edition. That I think was something I really enjoyed. Well, what about yourself? And what's your summary of ninth?
Yeah, I think that is a fantastic point that like the armies looked and felt like the armies that they should have been. The translation of rules into lore and lore into rules actually I think went really really well, and I hope that we don't lose any of that with this new simplified but not simple version of the game. But yeah, overall, I think like I definitely enjoyed it an awful lot for various different reasons. Made an awful lot of new friends um, throughout ninth edition. I think I joined the channel officially around the start of ninth potentially, or maybe end of eighth. It was
Well, no, it was about a year into it because the
yeah,
channel didn't really even start until ninth edition had begun. I think it was about 2 months after ninth edition we started the channel, and then I don't know, about 9 or 10 months into it, I think you joined. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
we
that was
was
pretty good for me.
yeah, yeah,
Naturally, and obviously we had Jack jump in then about 9 months ago at this point,
yeah.
which has been great too. And generally, like I would say, a lot of my enjoyment of ninth was carried by way of the channel in a lot of respects. In that, like, I suppose interacting with a community that was very dedicated to the World Eaters, having a kind of constant discourse with people as well about ideas, about lists, all that sort of stuff. Meeting new people, obviously, be it online or in real life, was fantastic. Like, very much the social aspect of Ninth was what I enjoyed, which isn't really necessarily anything to do with Ninth, but more to do with the community that kind of was built around the edition. But I
Yeah,
think by and large that does speak a little bit as well of the fact that the edition was good enough to sort of create that community too. That people wanted to engage with the game and things like that and have that discussion and go to these events and meet each other and stuff. So I think there was a lot of that for me as well, which was great. And obviously, like, properly dialing in with World Eaters and playing a lot of them and stuff was a ton of fun. But yeah, I think overall, like, definitely a very enjoyable edition compared to 8th edition as well, which I played through, which it was, as you said, it was fine, but like I had my gripes with 8th edition towards the end, especially here in Europe, where you were playing a lot of the time you were actually playing with the Maelstrom deck and stuff. And that wasn't great, so I was very relieved to see that go away. But yeah, so fantastic for us, fantastic for the channel. What we're going to talk about now, though, is we're going to dive into some of our favorite moments of Ninth. And Jamie, what I'm going to start with is I'm going to ask you what your favorite era of Ninth edition was. Be it if you look at it from a seasonal perspective, maybe like
Mhm.
Arcs of Omen was the most recent era, or Nephilim or anything like that. What kind of like passage of time did you enjoy the most?
Well, my answer is going to be Arcs of Omen. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First, is because my memory is terrible and I actually can't really remember what many of the other eras there were. Obviously, Narkmund and Nephilim, but I don't even remember what it was called before Narkmund.
I don't
Um,
know if it had a season name before then. I think we just
yeah,
called it the Drakarian Admech time.
yeah, we just kind of gave it that.
Yeah.
But honestly, now it's Arcs of Omen era, but mostly it's because it's Codex World Eaters era. Um, Obviously, for the majority of ninth edition, we had to play with our 8th edition rules. And whilst they were fun and janky and lots of stupid bullshit we could pull off, whilst we were playing with it, the meme in any circle of world eaters or chaos space marine players was two wounds when. We had our tracker tracking every day since the Warcom announcement of coming soon, trademark. Sorry, Mark. Mark of Khorne, obviously, was very triggered often by the daily updates there. Um, it was fun, but we were always playing on our back foot. But that was kind of our spirit. It really built us up as a community, I think, honestly. Then we got into ninth edition Chaos Space Marines and went through Narkman, Nephilim, all that stuff. I think mostly Nephilim for the CSM ninth ed. And I never gelled with that book. It was good. I'm not disparaging the book. I know a lot of people had success and fun with it. I couldn't pinpoint how to play that book. And if I look through my results that I track on the Battles app, like it literally shows my 8th edition win rate was 64, 65%. My CSM ninth ed book is down to like about 52%. And then once we get to Arcs of Omen and Codex World Eaters, I jump back up into the mid 60s. So,
I remember even talking to you during that passage of time as well,
yeah,
especially in Nephilim, that like definitely the impression that I got was that you weren't even having as much fun with it. I
yeah,
think,
I
and
wasn't.
I feel like you were really trying to have fun as well. That was the thing, is like you were always being like, this is it, blah blah blah, whatever. I think I've got it now, and it was, I don't know,
It
like I
didn't
kind
work.
of I could like feel your disappointment, and it was like disappointing me as well. I was just like, man, like, it sucked for me to like have to watch that.
Yeah, it was one of those things. Sometimes you have a rule set that doesn't gel with the way you think and play the game. And that was CSM ninth ed for me. But World Eaters come in right at about the same time as Arcs, and I had a hell of a lot of fun with that for the 3 or 4 months we had it, quite frankly. So that I would say that, yeah, Arcs, but specifically the tail end, the last few months of ninth ed, where we had our ninth edition codex, was weirdly my favorite part, um, just because I really like that book. and it sucks that we didn't have it for very long, for a lot of reasons. Obviously, there's a lot of kind of basically ethical reasons why it sucks, but from a pure fun standpoint, I really miss that book. But what about you, Darren? What part of ninth edition, as a younger man, I know your memory is a lot better than mine, and you can remember probably even what you ate for breakfast this morning because I can't. So, what
It
did you like
could be
most?
that way, yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. I think it's actually quite a nice juxtaposition to your thoughts because so for me, I would say like I experienced Arcs of Omen in the way that you experienced kind of Nachman Nephilim, in the sense
Okay,
that not that I didn't necessarily enjoy it because I did, but like it until I kind of found a list that really worked for me, which actually took until going to Warhammer Fest to find that list. I couldn't really find my groove with the World Leaders codex, and like I had pretty good success with it. Like my highest tournament placings were with that book, but something about it, even when I was doing very well, I'd come away from the event and I wasn't like satisfied with it. I think
right,
a lot of it might have been to do with the gameplay loop as well. I wasn't really engaging with it, so I gotta say that like while I love the rules, reading them, I was like, this is really cool, but like it's just not really my jam. Until I kind of went back to my roots and just fired as many berserkers onto the board as I possibly could. Then I started really having an awful lot of fun again, which was great. And it kind of, like you're saying, it does suck that it really took until the kind of dying days of ninth edition for me to find that flow. But I would say that like by far and away the most fun I had was around probably from start of the summer last year until around the time of the LVO was like my favorite kind of the end of
okay,
Nockmund, the start of Nephilim, because I actually love the Chaos Space Marine book. When we were playing within that mindset, the Black Rune of Damnation, Red Butcher Terminators was like my dream. I had so much fun with those guys.
yeah,
And I have like core memories now of like the things I did to some of my opponents with that unit. And like, amongst that sort of run of time is like there was a really brilliant broadsword tournament. There was a great Coventry, me and Jack in Leeds as well. There was so much about it. The book really clicked with me. There were some spectacular events that I went to as well, and the gameplay loop for that was particularly good, I think. So that would have been my favorite, I think, out of all the eras. Though I was like weirdly, I weirdly enjoyed when Dark Eldar were like dominating everything because I was just kind of running around being like, this is pretty funny. But
yeah, and
yeah,
you were getting a lot of reps in against them as well
I sure
because
was. Yeah.
like multiple games a week, I think, wasn't it?
Multiple games, yeah, a week, yeah,
Yeah,
easily. My roommate at the time was big into the Dark Elder, so that was a ton of fun. I kind of
yeah,
have a soft spot for Dark Elder as well, so I was just like, oh, nice to see the homies doing well. But
yeah.
yeah, so that was good. But I think we'll turn on now to quite a difficult question for you, Jamie. What was your favorite model of ninth edition that came out?
So can you repeat that?
So the game Warhammer 40k is actually
Right.
based around the concept of miniatures that you build and paint, which I know is an interesting concept. Maybe you might be familiar
No,
with it.
I just go on eBay and search and just buy it. No. Um, so yeah, I did with the new models, the new World Eaters models that were released, obviously Angron, the Juggerlord, new Berserkers, Jackals, all that stuff. Um, I did do some serious hobby work, and it'd been probably a year since I'd really seriously put the paintbrush down to or use the paintbrush and painted anything. And I really enjoyed painting the jackals, and I've only painted a few of the new berserkers so far, and they actually felt really nice. Didn't care for the eight bound so much, or
Yeah,
imbricatus,
I get you.
but I did really enjoy Angron. Angron was the model I've probably spent the most time on out of anything. Obviously, he's our Primarch, and it's the first big model I've personally painted. Like I've got some large models. Um, I suppose I've got a few large models that are kind of like just three colors with no details, but like my Lord of Skulls and stuff was already painted when I bought it. But yeah, Angron, I actually had a lot of fun and really tried to do some of for myself my best work. And I'd consider it pretty good. I'm very happy with it. Like when we do or if there's painting competitions at tournaments, I will put, if I bring Angron, I will put him up for it. Not expecting to win or anything, but it's something I'm proud of and I'm
Yeah,
happy for
you
people to
absolutely
look
should do
at. You
that.
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
I'd
Yeah.
say it was just a nice model because I mean my eyesight isn't great. I really need to wear glasses, but I'm just lazy. But like big details, and because I followed your advice and kept him and did it in sub assemblies, I was able to get all the kind of difficult places and really dial in and get a little bit of shading going on and stuff like that. So I had a lot of fun with Angron. Yeah, so I didn't hate hobbying for a little while.
I was
Um,
actually like really hyped when you were working on Angron because I was like, holy shit, I've actually never seen you like hype about like,
right.
like I'm I don't think I've ever seen you like send a work in progress pic into
I
like
was
our
just
chat
gonna
ever.
say,
And I was like, dude, this is kind of cool. Like I'm like pretty into like I guess it's like, if you see someone like engaging with something that they don't normally do and it's like something you're
yeah,
interested in as well, it's just pretty cool. And I was just like, yeah, man, like this is cool. Like you should be proud of this. Like
yeah,
it doesn't matter if it's like, better or worse than anyone else's. It's still something you did, which is like
yeah,
amazing. And the way I always say is like 99% of the people in the world wouldn't be able to do it because they haven't played Warhammer before. So,
there you go. Yeah,
top
yeah.
1%.
Make me feel good about myself. What about yours? Because it's possible you did a little bit of hobby over the last,
I
couple of
did,
years,
yeah.
isn't it? Just a little.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, like, come to think of it, my whole ninth edition thing actually encompasses when I was doing commissions as well, and that was
Right.
a slog. I painted a lot of models then,
Yeah.
and I actually learned that I actually really enjoy painting big models during that time period as well, which was pretty cool because before then, I suppose surprising to some people, like I actually just didn't paint big models at all, kind of like you.
Okay.
I'd painted like my Kaitan, and I was kind of like, cool, that's it, never doing that again. But yeah, having to paint like 20 nights in 3 months made me actually really fall in love with painting big models because it was cool. But anyway, so a lot of cool models came out in ninth edition, and
Yeah.
obviously the World Leader stuff was great. And I suppose a little bit controversially, I would say some of it wasn't really for me. The 8 band stuff, it's a cool canvas to work on, but to go with just the sculpt alone isn't really something that I enjoy. Because there's some bits of it that it just doesn't sit with me. And the berserkers are great. I really like the berserkers, like a stripped back legionnaire kind of vibe. But like they
Yeah.
were kind of exactly what I was expecting, which is fine. It's there's nothing wrong with that. But like I wanted to kind of be blown away a little bit. The jackals were like my favorite bit of the world leaders models because they are so grimdark and so cool, and I just love the Dishonored so much. The big boys, Barney and Philip,
Yeah.
like they have a very special spot in my heart, especially after Warhammer Fest. But yeah, and Angron is like is fine to me. Like he's fine. He's a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
But like that's kind of whatever. But what I really loved, what I really really loved in terms of model releases was the latest wave of Chaos Space Marine stuff, and
Right.
specifically from that, like everything from that wave was amazing. The Dark Commune, the Accursed Cultists, it was all like so up my street in like ways I can't even begin to explain. Like just like Grimdark painters, like absolute fantasy. But the new possessed were phenomenal. And I really enjoyed painting those guys. Like they were perfect. They went together so well. They had the perfect balance of like organic and inorganic material on them. And if you were into grimdark painting, they just had everything that you want from like a grimdark miniature. And I was like really proud of them when I got them done. I still think they're like my best unit. And yeah, they really hit the spot for me.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I can't use it because I haven't hobbied one yet. But the is it the torments, the kind of like the
Yeah.
super mutated accursed you get? So I've got a couple boxes of them new in box because can't use them anymore. But for Chaos Spawn or something, I might. But I just love those models.
Yeah.
But like I said, I haven't built or painted them yet, so I can't comment on that side of it. But as a pure aesthetic, like like we've talked about movies and stuff a lot, and I love The Thing
I was
and
about to
that
say,
kind of
yeah.
body horror, kind of like
Yeah.
just body parts ripping out of like and you can see remnants of the like the human behind, and
Yeah,
it's like almost being turned into a spawn kind of thing. Yeah, I love those models as well.
yeah.
You know, this is the only hobby you're going to get from me from another
But it's
4 years.
great.
So
Like, this is fantastic content. It's so rare. Yeah, they just really hit the spot for me. I haven't.
yeah.
I need to paint some of those accursed. I haven't gotten around to it
Mm.
yet. I need to kind of work around on them as well. But yeah, like look, in fairness, I would say that in terms of like compared to eighth edition, the model releases in ninth edition were phenomenal. Like eighth edition, we'd see a character every now and then and whole bunches of space marines, but like I feel like everyone, almost everyone anyway, got a
Yeah.
significant range increase, especially the Xenos, which is good because
Mm.
Xenos players had been hurting for a little bit, and they did need, but like we saw massive glow ups for like Orcs, Necrons, Eldar, like all these other ranges, and like Votan did come out. I'm not a fan, but a lot of people are and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think in terms of model releases, fantastic time for people in
Don't
general.
think I don't think Tau got much, did they?
They got Farsight and they got the other guy, Dark Strider maybe is
Dark
his name.
Strider. Okay.
Yeah, they
Well,
didn't
I
get
mean that's
much.
good because you know what I feel about Tau players?
Tell me,
Fuck them.
Jamie. Yeah,
Fuck them.
you literally play Tau. You literally
No,
play
I
Tau.
no, I don't own Tau anymore.
Oh,
Don't
you
own Tau,
offloaded
and
them,
I
of
never
course.
played with them. I had some, I just never played with them.
Yeah, well, we'll see. They could be on the agenda for 10th edition if rumors are to be believed. But yeah, I like really cool. And in terms of like the model front, GW I think hit it out of the park, as they generally tend to do. Like say what you want about the rules, which are subpar at the best of times, but the models are fundamentally brilliant.
Yeah,
So yeah, that was I think our favorite model. So I suppose going on to the real meat of the favorite moments is I suppose something that the channel covers a lot is events. And
yeah,
we went to an awful lot of events during ninth edition. More
yeah.
than I possibly could have imagined going to, especially in the last year or two. But Jamie, what was your favorite event from ninth edition?
So it is hard. I can't really give a clear cut answer because I had a lot of good events for different reasons. Some of my smaller RTTs that I go to in my local area were always have a good time, but there was a couple which were like really well, and I felt I performed very well. Always making new friends at that. Um, well, we're not. It's not called Gem Hammer anymore, but I'm not sure what the new name is. But and then some of the GTS I went to had met some people and had a really good time. And it's hard for me to choose honestly between the ACO and the LVO, like the two super majors I attended, because they were travel, met people from the Red Path Discord and stuff. Like ACO met Ron and Mark and Ben and loads of people, and then at the LVO met you. That was quite a big deal, and Don and obviously a bunch of other people. But I will say, I think the LVO was probably my overall favorite. It had its ups and downs, but I think what tilts it in that direction for me was honestly a bunch of sweaty guys in a house like that. Just us lot sitting in that house, um, just talking and playing Warhammer for what was we there 4 days?
Yeah,
I can't
for
remember. Yeah,
about 4 or 5 days anyway.
yeah,
Yeah,
four or
felt like
five
an
days.
eternity for me.
Yeah, yeah. You were there a lot longer than the rest of us,
That's
but
true.
and I
That is
think
true.
some of your clothes still are as well. But
No, they're in Philadelphia
oh,
somewhere.
they're still in
Yeah,
Philadelphia. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll look for them when I go back because I'm sure I'll be there for
Yes,
another
yeah.
day. But yeah, I think the LBO for the overall experience, like the games were great. I mean, I had a lot of fun, performed well enough. Just Vegas itself was expensive and everything like that. But you have to go accepting these kind of things. You can't go to Vegas and then be surprised that you're paying $10 for a bottle of beer or something. I mean, you know what you're getting into. But just being able to hang out with yourself and Mark and Ron and Don and we had Jay with us and a lot of the other folks we talked to at the event. It was a genuinely good time like that just so happened to be all about 40K. And that's what we're all nerding out about. So it's nice when that's the theme of your holiday. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I'm on a
yeah.
holiday right now, but like my wife and daughter and my mum and that, they're not. I can't sit there and talk about Warhammer with them. But
Yeah.
we're yeah. So I'm going to put LVO on it for me for the kind of social aspect of it. What
I think
about
it's
yourself?
pretty fair, yeah. I mean, like the LVO was special for like a lot of reasons. The social side of it really was the main thing for me. Like I while I didn't like necessarily have like bad games as such, I've definitely enjoyed like all the games I played at other tournaments a lot more. But like the
Yeah,
social aspect of LVO, it's very hard to match. I think I don't know if I've ever enjoyed a social side of 40k any more than that because like it was just like not having to go back to a hotel room by yourself and just like kind of fester in
yeah,
your bed and just be like, oh, cool. It was like, yeah, we're going back to the house. We're going to have beers. Myself and Ron are going to bully Jamie for a few hours, which was like, turns out, really fun pastime after a while. You got some exercise in thanks to me and Ron as well. That was great too, you know.
completely unnecessary exercise, by the way.
Well,
Completely.
look, it was a 5 minute walk at the end of the day, but yeah, like that was that was great. Like, don't get me wrong, that was fantastic, and I suppose the how do I phrase this? The what it signified in terms of like, you know, I'm only here and you're only here because of the channel and because of the
Yeah,
support from people to the channel. Like that was quite special as well for an entirely different reason. And was like quite surreal for me anyway, being like I've literally been flown across the Atlantic Ocean to play games with toy soldiers because people like the weird stuff we put out on the internet. I'm like,
yeah,
that's an
right.
interesting pathway I didn't see my life going down, but hey, cool, I'm not going to complain. Um, but that was awesome, and obviously, again, you know, thanks so much for everyone who supports us. But yeah, so there's like a few events. There's two ones in my head that I kind of like are on the scales in terms of what was actually the best event. And controversially, I suppose somewhat, Warhammer Fest was one. For a lot of the same reasons that you kind of love the LVO. I got to meet a ton of really cool people. I got to hang out with some good friends again. Obviously, I was there with Jack, which was like a little bit of a downside, but you know we get past that. But yeah, so like that was awesome, and like I really feel like me and Jack were both having an amazing time there as well, which was really good. So that was really nice, and obviously you know doing pretty well in the painting side of it as well was kind of peak moment there too. But like also having the kind of capacity to, when I wasn't playing games, there was stuff to do, you know, because it was a convention.
Yeah,
So like I could go around and I could like meet people, I could just look at cool Warhammer shit, or just like take part in any of the other activities. That was great. So that was really fun. But what is also up there for me is Coventry Super Major from last year.
okay.
Um, for a few different reasons, because the so it's 8 games, which sounds like a lot to people. I love 8 game tournaments so much. Like there's something about it where it's like you can never really feel like you're doing bad unless you've lost 7 games and you're going into your eighth. Like my day one, I was like 1-2, and I pulled it back to a 4-2 finish, which was pretty awesome. Um, so like, or no, sorry, what was it? 4-2. That doesn't make sense. 5-3 was my final score.
Right.
But yeah, so like that was really cool, and like I got best painted there as well, which was so cool, and went over with a bunch of lads from Ireland. My buddy Mike, who'd never kind of been across to any other tournament other than like the 40-man broadsword, was like blown away. So we were kind of like hype on him, and like there was like really good energy there as well. We all went out like every night and stuff, and it was just tons of fun. So yeah, that's up there as well. And I don't think I could really say between Warhammer Fest and that Coventry that if I could necessarily pick one which was better than the other.
Yeah, it's fair, and I'm super pumped because I've never been to a tournament in the UK. I think I've only actually played Warhammer in the UK once in the last 20 years.
That's so weird to me. But
Yeah,
like,
right.
yeah, like it makes sense, but it's so weird, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm obviously we're all planning to be at the London GT this year, and
I'm
that
gonna
should
bring a Warhound Titan.
do it, man. Fuck yeah. But I think off the back of that, what do you think from ninth edition? What aspect of ninth edition do you think was the most successful? What did ninth edition do well for you? Like, what do you think of all the aspects that it could be, whether game mechanics or like the model releases or anything? What was the best part for you?
So it's a good one, and obviously there's a lot of things that I enjoyed about ninth edition, but I think from a competitive standpoint, which is I suppose what we spend an awful lot of our time talking about and discussing, especially on the channel. What I always said to people was that the gap in power between the average factions was very, very small. So outside of the outliers in ninth edition, so the likes of Drakari when they were very powerful, Admech at their height, the actual like balance between the rest of the factions was very, very, very good. I think, which is
Right.
something that 8th edition did not do at all, because in 8th edition you had like the very, very powerful factions like the Castellan and the Loyal 32, and you had like the kind of the pack, but even within the pack of like all the rest of the factions or whatever, there was significant difference between, we'll say, a World Eaters person and maybe even someone playing Emperor's Children in terms of the actual power level. And then if you look at like the difference between say demons and stuff like that, or like Imperial Guard or other things in 8th edition, the gap was huge. Like there was fundamental problems throughout 8th edition which were kind of like leveled out in ninth. So I'd say overall, like the part that ninth got the most right was keeping everything relatively balanced relative to each other, outside of the odd time that there would be an outlier. And I think for the most part, apart from maybe the 9 months of Drakari domination, things were brought into line pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, kind of agree with that, but I'll save that for a little while later because, but I do certainly comparing it to eighth edition. I do think generally we had significant periods of time of relative balance. You can't play 40k and not have a boogeyman faction. There just has to be someone who's going to be technically better,
Yeah,
like
like
on
with the
paper.
amount of variables in the
Yeah,
game, right? You can't control all those variables and keep them in line with each other
yeah.
at all times, right? It's
But
just not possible.
we can see. I know GW's done it with their like meta whatever their meta watch and like Goonhammer and Stat Check and all these kind of other third parties who have been really dialing down on the stats. That kind of gap between the top army and the bottom army, where eighth edition was very much like that. You know, literally World Eaters were down here on in eighth edition, and the kind of Law 32 or whoever was up there was always here, and it was a huge gulf, and it was very much one army, one army, one army like that, and it was fairly static throughout the edition. Maybe a little bit of changing, but fairly static.
Yeah, we had the
Ninth edition,
Castellan for more than a year
yeah.
anyway.
So,
Yeah.
but the ninth edition has been very much been between, like say, a 45 and 65% rate, and they've been trying to bring it down. And obviously, like the worst offenders, like the Drakari dominance and stuff, they did sit at a positive 65% win rate for quite a while. But there was ninth edition really heralded a very active approach by GW with the balanced data slates and the 6 month seasonal chapter approved, which is still a bit, controversial, but I mean, it does mean every 3 months we were getting something, and often a bit more often than that because of Codex FAQs and stuff like that. They did address problems within reasonable amounts of time generally.
Yeah, sometimes it felt
It
like
was
a
a lot
long
better than
time.
it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but sort of like on the back of that, the thing I think for me was the best aspect of ninth edition was the missions themselves, the GT book missions. Obviously, whilst they were for the competitive or the match play side of the game, I know, I've got some friends and people I know who play just narrative or open play, open warfare, stuff like that. Typically, would still use those missions. Maybe change the rules a bit, like which is fine as Warhammer as a sandbox. But they provided for me a very good foundation for the game. There were some issues that needed worked out, which they did, like While We Stand, We Fire and Stranglehold, and some of these secondaries, which were
Yeah.
certainly for certain armies, just auto takes and auto 15s and things like that. But by the end of ninth, I think the missions themselves were perhaps getting a little bit stagnant because we'd played so many games. But the core principles of, like the revolving deployment zones, the mission tertiaries, the sort of book of secondaries we could pick from, they almost got faction secondaries right, almost, but like I mean, we had stupid secondaries.
I
Yeah,
was about to say, if anyone had the worst, it was us towards the end in
yeah, no,
terms of power. Yeah.
like we were kind of internally balanced with a low unit roster and stuff like that. We don't. I'm not going to dive into it. Faction secondaries were a problem that should either shouldn't have existed or should have been at best one per faction and things like that. But a lot of armies had their moment in the sun with that kind of stuff. But generally, the core mechanics of the missions felt right. I feel if you played every mission in that book 2 or 3 times, and you already understand the core rules and stuff, you could walk up to any game, roll off a mission, and you knew your plan. You knew, okay, so in this battle, regardless of what I'm playing against, I need to do this, this, and this. Those are my win conditions. Then you start factoring in the variables. Okay, I'm playing a fast melee army. Okay, I'm playing a slow shooty army. That's where your strategy would come in. For
Yeah.
me, it was the missions.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think a lot of people would agree with that. You know, like the missions were, well, not necessarily full of flavor a lot of the time, were functional. And from a competitive standpoint, a lot of the time that's what you want. The flavor is in how the game plays out
Yeah.
rather than the provided missions. And I really enjoy them too. So I think that's an entirely fair assessment. But I suppose what we'll move on to now is maybe the dirty part of ninth edition, what the edition got wrong. And I think I'll start with what I'm thinking here. And basically, it's a little bit on kind of what you were saying and what we were talking about, but a lot of my retrospective problem with the edition, now that we've kind of seen how everything has gone, is sort of how it was presented to us from a competitive or even match play standpoint. In terms of, I felt like during the edition, GW had a big fundamental frame shift in terms of what their plan was for how they were going to roll out competitive. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's reflective of their poor capacity to plan. And then I suppose when they kind of realize that something's wrong, how long it takes them to pivot away. Because we started off with this, like, all these codexes coming out or whatever, and that was fine. And before we had all the codexes out, which was another problem, the codex release schedule was terrible. And we know that there was problems with production and X, Y, and Z. That doesn't really excuse it when you can just have digital rule sets. And like, they can say COVID this and COVID that, but I'm kind of like, your rules can just be available as PDFs online as they are in 10th edition. And guess what? It was super easy to release everything all at once in
Yeah.
1 week. And it was awesome. So maybe do a little bit more of that. I don't know. But yeah, so like the codex is taking a long time to come out, and then some armies getting supplement books before we got any codex really rubbed me up the wrong way. It's like you actually have 2 or 3 sets of rules now. Like Nids had 3 different rule sets before they got their actual codex.
Yeah.
And that really bugged me because while that was all happening, then they
Sorry,
go
that
for
was
it.
very well done. Very well done.
Oh yes, I see what I
It
did.
bugged you.
Excellent, excellent. Um, so yeah, then like kind of I suppose they realized that that was wrong, and there was a lot of feedback coming in of people telling them like, "Hey, this is totally not cool," and they kind of pivoted randomly then into this sort of new system of getting rid of the supplement books as having rules in them as such. Because apparently the Arcs of Omen books were going to have like loads of rules in them that got scrapped, but like then they kind of changed to this sort of balanced data slate sort of formula, which like by itself is very very good, but it sort of threw us all a little bit in terms of like, whoa, this is just after happening. And then we went from this sort of like Octarius into Nachmund into Nephilim and stuff. And each time there was a transition, it sort of changed into something a little bit different as well. Then again, and for me, it wasn't very consistent in terms of how they were presenting rules to us, and that was annoying in terms of like they might say something like, "Here's how things are going to be now," and I'm like, "Well, that's true, but like in a few months' time, you could decide that that's not working for you, or the players can decide that's not working for us." And I suppose some people can view that as a good thing, but it was just very uncertain in my opinion in terms of like things can randomly change, and I can be enjoying it a lot right now, but it might just not be that way in a couple of months' time. So for me, not a crazy big fan of that in terms of like the core vision was, I suppose, lost a little bit, I think.
Yeah. I can see. I think that kind of gels nicely with something that I didn't really enjoy. And it kind of harkens back to your positive about the basic power creep, is what I'm trying to say here. It did for me, and maybe this isn't universal, but it did feel like it was a arms race of every book that came out had to be better than the last book. Um, so it would push that need for players to always pivot to the next army, quickly buy a bunch of things, a bunch of orc buggies, or 40 admech infantry guys, or whatever was hot. And it did kind of slow down near the end, I guess. I can't even remember what the last few codexes before Imperial Guard were.
Was
Obviously,
Demons,
CSM.
Votan, CSM.
Yeah.
I think that was
So
pretty much it.
yeah, like demons were good, and had a lot of strength to them, but they never affected the meta in a way that a lot of previous books had. Votan would have done had they not have been pre-nerfed. Um, if they'd have been, playing as they were written as, would have been disastrous. And then CSM was a lot of fun, but again, it was something that didn't change the meta dramatically. Imperial Guard had a huge impact, and World Eaters was just fun, like haha, World Eaters go smash. But it feels like every book up to then was, we do what they do, but better. It's like we do more,
Yeah, that
we
period of time
ignore
where it was
more.
like Custodes, Tau, Nids, Eldar. That was so
Yeah,
rough. That was
yeah,
so rough.
yeah,
Because it was just like this is literally an arms race that's changing every month, and I'm still operating with an eighth edition codex. Like,
yeah,
what the hell am I supposed to do?
yeah. It was not fun. It had elements. It was like when we were eighth edition book, it was very much like no one cares us, no one cares about us, no one likes us, and we don't care. Like we were literally fighting from the bottom. Then once we got our ninth edition book, it was like, okay, we should be equal now, right? And obviously, personally for me, it didn't feel like that. I know a lot of players were able to fight on even ground, but it did feel like after all that time of just constantly being at the bottom of the pile, it just didn't feel like we got the same toys that everyone else had got for a month or two when they were the new hot stuff. But yeah, it was that, and I'm sure there's a lot of reasons for it. COVID, the Suez Canal blockage, a hundred other things, excuses. I don't like it, and I just hope because the roadmap for 10th doesn't isn't inspiring me with confidence. But we'll save that for another video, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yes.
but yeah, I
Yeah,
think
we will.
I think that kind of sums up my negative, my least favorite thing about ninth was just the constant battle uphill against whatever the stupidest, most broken thing was competitively. And I know a lot of people who watch aren't competitive players, and you may hear us drone on about competitive, but the fact of it is, comp play will affect you. And it will benefit you because if you're just playing friendly games, during the Tyranid bug menace, if you go with your kind of cool, fluffy Imperial Guard army against Tyranids, their rules just at a points efficiency, even if they bring a fluffy list, were so much better than yours that you couldn't engage in a fun narrative game because you knew the outcome. Because everything was so much better than yours, you would have to play with 3,000 points versus their 2,000 to have a semblance of balance. So luckily, the competitive side highlights this stuff to try and push GW to fix it. Doesn't work all the time, but we need less of that. We need more of everything in the middle and less of this shit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's perfect. Yeah. I echo that a lot. Like obviously completely agree with the whole kind of power creep and stuff as well. But I think, on that note, we can kind of summarize it, I suppose, and round off the video in terms of like I would say it's fair to say that overall ninth edition was probably a positive thing for the two of us.
Oh yeah.
Like I know I can definitely say for me it was like a solid 7.5 out of 10 edition, I think.
Oh,
I don't know
I'll give
about
it an
you.
eight out of 10. Of
You
course, it's
giving
got
it
to
the
be
big
eight,
eight?
Garrett, because this is the red part. If it's not 8 out of 10, then what are you doing?
I mean, an 8 out of a 10 is a perfect edition. It wasn't quite
Oh,
there for
that
me.
is true.
You know,
That
it
is
wasn't
true.
quite there. But yeah, like really fun, brilliant times there as we've talked about and stuff. And hopefully 10th edition can replicate some of the success of ninth and learn from some of the mistakes as well, which we've kind of talked about here. So I suppose let us know down below if you agree with our sentiments, if you disagree with them, what your favorite moments were, what your favorite models were. Did you go to any events that you really loved? What you kind of think about our perspective on things that went right and things that went wrong. Maybe you've got some other suggestions and stuff. We would love to hear them. We'd love to engage in that conversation. And to engage even better in the conversation, you can join our Discord. The links are in the description of this video, where there is a constant discussion about all the things that are great and terrible in 40k and the wider world. So yeah, all the links to support us again down below. Catch us wherever we are: YouTube, Twitch, Spotify, etc., etc. But until the next one, folks, this has been a fantastic chat about summarizing ninth edition, sending that one off into the horizon while we greet the battleship of 10th edition that draws into the harbor of us world leader players. But yeah, Jamie, anything you want to say before we close this one out? That was a good
Yeah, what the
analogy, man.
fuck was that
I
metaphor?
thought it
Like,
was pretty good.
and you pulled that out of nowhere. I appreciate it though.
Yeah, I thought it
I
was
mean,
decent.
but naval humor, nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Go
So
on, get
yeah,
us out of here, man.
I've been Dara. This has been Jamie. Until the next one, folks, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill, maim, burn.